planes. This right here is an embodied form of the violet ray spectrum. Tap in and tune in Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern, live on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Grand Rising with ChristoLight, your sacred space for discovering the Ascended Masters in crystal healing. Ashe.
Talking about a grand civilization dwelling in the depths of our planet surely shakes the mind of the skeptical reader. And perhaps the strongest challenge is the spiritual mission of these elusive intraterrestrial beings. Do they help humankind in our journey towards infinity? But why? Who are they? Where are they from? In the history of different cultures on Earth, we find clear hints that inner dwelling, a secret place where the rishis or mahatmas, supra-human beings that only allow entry into their world, those who have been called. It is in the East where most references to the underground kingdom are. It is so because according to the Tibetan legends, it was the Gobi Desert in Mongolia, where the first physical center of the White Brotherhood, later known by the name of Shambhala, main city of intraterrestrial network of Akahata, was established. That name is no longer strange to many. Also called Shangri-La, the supreme center of invisible masters, was addressed in a high-impact movie based on the book Lost Horizon by novelist James Hilton. The message reached many souls, but the search for Shambhala stretches back decades. Many explorers have gone after her, tracking her in the sands of the Gobi or in the Himalayas. And although not all were successful in their endeavor, they found disturbing evidence of their role and the beings that inhabit it. Perhaps one of the most celebrated experiences with Shambhala was that of Nicholas Roerich, Russian explorer and artist, who embarked in the 1920s an expedition to Tibet and Central Asia. There he was invited to visit the underground kingdom. In 1926, Roerich saw in daylight a golden object, as if it were a sphere or possibly a disk, reflecting sunlight while imposing flying in the skies of the mountain range Altai Himalaya. The lamas who accompanied him, unsurprisingly facing this extraordinary fact, claimed that it was a sign of Shambhala. It does not surprise us either, as we know that celestial visitors perform surveillance and monitoring functions in the vicinity of an interior retreat. The object eventually disappears behind the mountains of Humboldt, as the caravan accompanying the European explorer exchanged with obvious enthusiasm the wonder they had witnessed. During the sighting, both lamas and Roerich perceived a special perfume, like flowers, a phenomenon that often accompanies contact experiences. To give a quick scientific idea of it, let's say that humans normally generate a vibration between 62 megahertz and 68 megahertz. For example, if our frequency decreases only to 57 megahertz, we may be immune to a cold or flu. Detailed studies of aromatherapy conclude that on this scale, the highest vibration is issued by the fragrance of the rose, which can reach up to 320 megahertz. In other words, these supernatural perfumes perceived in contact experiences are actually waves of high vibrational quality, which have been felt even in their own Marian apparitions. Definitely Rorik lived a close encounter as he headed towards Shambhala, where should leave a mysterious stone that fell from the sky. He went in search of La Torre del Rey, presumably located in the heart of Shambhala. His journey, beyond seeking to meet the Mahatmas face to face, was to return a strange black stone to the tower that stays on forever by a light from another world. I've already talked about that stone in other articles. Was Chintamani stone part of a much larger body that came from heaven, now hidden in the Gobi Desert? It is said that the stone has mysterious properties, like being able to turn telepathy on or create a consciousness transformation on people who were just in contact only with her. Interestingly, the black stone of the Kaaba in Mecca and the stone that was in the former temple of Cybele, goddess mother of the Middle East, was also part of that magical meteorite. To give an idea of this, in his book Betis, Homme et Dieu in 1924, to give an idea of this in his book, M. Ferdinand Ossendowski already mentioned that the stone of power that would have been sent in ancient times by the king of the world, spiritual head of Shambhala, to the Dalai Lama and then transported to Urga in Mongolia, suddenly disappeared for about 100 years. Rene Guénon, in his book The King of the World in 1927, rightly related the puzzle with Lapsit Exils, the stone fallen from heaven, upon which appeared inscriptions in certain circumstances, and which is identified to the Grail in Wolfram de Nachtenbach's version. Anyway, the initiates think that the origin of the strange stone is in Orion. According to the Lama's stories, whenever humanity faces a new spiritual mission, a fragment of this stone, Chintamani, is sent to the surface of the planet and then returns to Shambhala when the mission is complete.
Grand day, grand rising. Welcome, welcome. In this new time space. I'm Marcus ChristoLight, your host of this extravagant adventure where we dive, break down, dissect, come to conscious matrix that we are a part of, that we are co-creating in and with, and ultimately coming to self-realization as I am present in this present time and moment as we find our relationship with the Creator, the soul, and what you hear. It was just an opener to talk about Shambhala, or also known as Shangri-La, basically the main hub or the main place on the planet Earth where you're able to access and telepathically and spiritually connect with these different ascended masters. Now, as we continue on in this series, starting today, we're going to be talking about each of the individual Chohans or Chohans. Chohans, they are the chiefs of light that make our universal particle and material universe. So as we go through these, you guys are going to be learning about these Chohans or ascended masters and their human journeys. You're going to learn about who they incarnated as, what kind of lessons they went through as human beings, as well as what kind of mission they were human beings. You know, about why they and what they're doing in the present time on their ascension journey in the higher planes while we're down here in the third dimension. So it's gonna be really cool. You guys are gonna get the full insight, the full downloads about who these individual ascended master energies are, the potentiality of what it can bring into your life, as well as just getting any puzzle pieces or connected dots about the human lives that they had, the mission they had, and how it was able to affect our planet, as well as the legacy of our human life. So it's gonna be really cool. Before we dive in to our first ray, Chohan, let's go ahead and take a recap of our episode yesterday, where we explained what a Chohan is and what it means to be a Chohan when it comes to ascended mastery. So we're gonna take that rewind, and now we're gonna deep dive and dive into Morya, the Chohan first blue ray.
On Grand Rising with ChristoLight. Don't miss this deep dive, live 10 to 11 a.m. EST.
Ascended master is a term that is highly misunderstood within the metaphysical and New Age movement. Commonly known ascended masters that are channeled frequently are mostly our human spiritual elder brothers and sisters that have gone beyond the reincarnational wheel of the 3D earth. Now, of course, you can channel pure ascended master energy and archetypes, and then you can also channel distorted false light versions as well. So this is why learning about our spiritual anatomy that explains the dimensional levels are important. One can employ more discernment with this understanding. References of the 7 rays and theosophy teachings of Madame Blavatsky in the late 1800s, as well as Alice Bailey. And then it's also saying that there was also around this time figures that were getting hijacked through their channels and through their transmission with fallen entities in the astral planes. So you can channel dark and negative entities. And for some figures throughout our history, like Aleister Crowley and others, they end up actually going to extreme, and then they connect with negative entities, and then that can be the downfall of their studies or the downfall of the communities that they were building. Sadly, when the universal time matrix was invaded, the Chohan's consciousness bodies were captured, cloned, copied, and trapped in the phantom matrix in ways they were unable to function in their true form and function as intelligently designed by God Creator. Thus, they are referred to as the fallen ascended masters, and they are cloned light holograms that are used by the negative agenda to masquerade as ascended masters in order to hijack the new age ascension and disclosure community. The power of the 3x3, when both rays have made the ascension, when the individual works with the system of worlds instead of just in one world. This is the way the Godhead is ever expanding the perfection of itself throughout the infinity and keeping order throughout interstellar space. Chohan means Lord or Master or a chief. Each of the 7 rays has a chosen who focuses the Christ consciousness of that ray, which is indeed the law of the ray, governing its righteous use and human. So having ensouled and demonstrated this law of the ray throughout numerous incarnations and taking initiations both before and after the ascension. So the Maha Chohan is the representative of the Holy Spirit. The one who holds this office and hierarchy represents the Holy Spirit of the Father, Mother, God of Alpha Omega, the evolutions of this planet, and to the elemental kingdom. The retreat of the Maha Chohan, the Temple of Comfort, is located on the etheric plane with a focus in the physical at the island of Sri Lanka.
Benefits and progress of the human race enter the world and experience of humankind along these 7 rays. This is a permanent section of the bridge dedicated to each of these great masters through which they may the rays and their God qualities. The first ray.
All right, so that was where we left off with yesterday's episode, talking about what a Chohan is and what the 7 main Chohans of the 7 rays of light are and the significance of them. So with that being said, I'm pretty excited as we're going to deep dive into the first ray, which is the blue ray, the will to strength as well as energy in order to exist. That is the divine masculine, the blue ray, the God's will. So the first ray, Chohan or Chohan, is Lord El Morya. Now, let's go ahead and get a little preview into El Morya.
This is why you need to know El Morya. He's credited with the first ray. First ray, power. First ray, leadership. First ray, divine will. Meet Marcus ChristoLight. He's taking us deeper on Grand Rising with ChristoLight. We're diving into the origins of El Morya. Ascended master of the first ray, spiritual backbone and sovereign will. Marcus ChristoLight peels back layers, historical threads, channeled teachings, how El Morya's energy shows up in modern spiritual practice. Expect surprising links to theosophy, Himalayan lore, first ray archetypes, leader, archetype protector, archetype warrior of truth. Marcus breaks down practical takeaways, how to connect with willpower without aggression, how devotion fuels disciplined action, simple practices to anchor courage in your daily life. If you're curious about lineage, initiation, how inner authority translates into real-world change, this preview is your map. Hit Grand Rising with ChristoLight for the full deep dive. Ready to meet the force behind fearless action?
All right. See, before I dive in to El Morya specifically, there's a couple of things that the AI brought up. Talking about taking action without force, doing things without having to have an expectation, or taking action in your life without having to prove yourself to others. That is having healthy Blu-ray energy. Having a healthy first ray, divine masculine energy, is when you just feel naturally confident in yourself as a human I was created. I have purpose. I have fruits. With that, I get to choose how I co-create. I don't need anything outside of me to tell me how to co-create. I also don't need to prove to anyone outside of me that I can co-create. We all have the will to be able to co-create, and we all have free will. We are all connected to source. So therefore, I have nothing to prove to anyone, and I am not expecting others to prove to me. But we are being, and we are allowing ourselves to co-create as beings. That's kind of like having a really healthy embodied first ray, blue ray energy. And we're going to be human lives that Morya lived as on the earth through the earth school. Keep in mind that the lessons and the experiences, the kind of legends that were brought through Morya's journeys as a human, such as King Arthur, which we're definitely going to be deep diving into today. Keep in mind that it's lessons, it's also information, and it's also symbolic representations to help give us knowledge and information about this human journey as well. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with King Arthur. You know, there's a lot of movies, a lot of books about King Arthur that they have kept in the shadows when it comes to the true spiritual purpose and mission of why King Arthur came about and why he had such a significant impact on our human history. All right, let's cue the music and let's get into it. Welcome in everyone that's here as well. Thank you guys for tuning in today. If you're in the comments, feel free to let your maybe say grand rising, say hello. If you ever want to comment throughout the episode, feel free. This is a great interactive space. I love interacting with you guys. I also like to pull up your comments onto the screen as well. If you have anything that you want the collective to see you say, any helpful reminders, holistic tips, or anything else that comes about. Grid community space where we all get to interact together. Grand hello rising. Good to see you, Joey. I hope you're doing well. I hope your health is continuing to increase and that you're doing well with yourself these days. Good to see you, brother. See, that's why I like to see you guys comment, because I don't know who's watching. I just see numbers. So I like to know, like, you know, is my brother in the comments? Is my sister in the comments? Do we have someone new that's feeling inspired by the space? You know, I love all that stuff. So feel free to express yourself. This is our space together. This ain't no class in session where you gotta be all quiet. Welcome in, whoever just joined us. I'll just remind you guys that you guys can interact. Feel free to comment in the comments. Feel free to build community in the comments with each other. Also, your feedback and your comments are very much supported. If you guys have any downloads or deep reflections as we dive into this information, let me know in the comments, because I know this is going to bring up some things for you guys, especially when we talk about King Arthur. And yeah, King Arthur for everyone. So we're going to be talking about the first ray. Now, again, a Chohan is a chief, lord, or a leader that represents a different aspect of the universe that we are a part of. They represent by helping maintain the order and the will of the creator in its original form so that it may stay in place for us to be able to exist and continue experiencing. It doesn't truly get when this is the life we live. This is life. This is the reality of the universe that we are a part of. So yeah, it's deep, but it's also just what it is at the same time. All right. El Morya. And keep in mind too, lastly, before we begin, don't put any expectation on yourself to feel like you're going to understand every single thing in this one time that you can also meditate, internally connect, and check out anything as you feel. And as always, take it or leave it. All right, so El Morya. El Morya is chief of the Darjeeling Council of the Great White Brotherhood. So we actually kicked off this episode with a video about Shambhala and the Great White Brotherhood. Let me go ahead and give you guys a very, very short explanation of the Great White Brotherhood. As for some of us that could not be familiar and are only used to hearing about our modern history with terms like the Aryan Brotherhood, it might be a little confusing. So this is on the Ascended Master Encyclopedia.org for anybody that would like to use the reference. It's also down below in the description. So as it takes its time loading, here we go. The Great White Brotherhood. So when it's talking about white, it's referencing the color white, as in like the purity and the light of Christ, as in that type of white. So it's a spiritual order of Western saints and Eastern adepts that have reunited with the spirit of the living God and who comprise the heavenly host. They transcend the cycles of karma and rebirth and ascend into a higher reality, which is the eternal abode of the soul. White refers to not race, but the aura, the halo of white light surrounding their form. The Ascended Masters of the Great White Brotherhood, united for the highest purpose of the brotherhood of men under the fatherhood of God, have risen in every age from every culture and religion to inspire creative achievement in education, the arts and science, God government, and the abundant life through the economies of the nations. The brotherhood also includes in its ranks certain unascended chalies of the Ascended Masters. Jesus Christ, or Yeshua, revealed this heavenly order of saints, robed in white, to his servant John in Revelation. So yeah, anytime they're talking about those that are robed in white or they're pure white, they're talking about the ascended beings of the Great White Brotherhood. And yes, Yeshua is in direct contact with them, as well as most of us that do spiritual work. Purpose. The Great White Brotherhood's primary function is to return mankind's consciousness to the liberty of oneness or unification through the spreading abroad of an understanding of cosmos, the unerring laws that govern the cycles and destiny of the micro and macro. So basically what it's saying is like they hold the space to continue to give the knowledge and the wisdom down into these lower dimensions about what oneness is, and they are the ones that continue to supply us with to access this information down here in this third dimension. So everything that we see in this third dimension is a material form. Where do those material forms come from, though? What is the intelligence that is enacting these forms that are representing them. That's where these Chohans or ascended masters come in. These ascended masters are the ones that are in the non-physical planes that are descending down in different frequency in order for material forms to create. And then these material forms embodied through these different rays of light with the information and codes embodied within it are then experiences taking place down here in this third dimension. Now, like I said, this is deep stuff. It's not going to be gathered in one session. But if you continue to meditate, if you continue to take in little bits of information and process it and really digest it and integrate it, then that's the key. Take it in small steps. It's hard to understand too if we only think or that everything is just physical. Or you can also say that, everything else besides humans and animals. So we got to really be able to zoom out. We got to have an open this universe that we are part of if we really want to know the truth about what we are in. And there's a reason why, there's a reason why we live this life, and that not only do we live this life, but we actually, exist as a soul. And that's a whole other conversation, is that, we're a soul being. We're a being of light that is experiencing through a human vessel for a temporary time. Now, how much critically think about that as we say that or hear that, especially if we're at a festival or we're at a retreat and we hear people say these things, but do we really sit and logically think about it though? And that's where you start stepping into these realms, is when you start questioning that and when you start opening up to thinking about those things. Because then you realize, okay, yeah, if I'm a soul, then that means there's a lot more to than just being a human being as well. And that humans aren't everything. Not sure how well the connection's coming for everyone, but we will continue. Welcome, and yeah, glad it's connecting wires for you, Joey. And it's also really cool to know that you've connected with these wonderful beings. Not sure what's going on over here. The Wi-Fi is always doing this when I'm streaming. No matter where I'm at. Come on. All right. Okay, cool. El Morya. Time to talk about El Morya. Of the Darjeeling Council of the Great White Brotherhood, Chohan of the First Ray and Hierarch of the Etheric Temple of Goodwill over Darjeeling, India. He is the founder of the Summit Lighthouse. If anybody's heard about the Summit Lighthouse, they talk about Ascended Masters. And the guru and teacher of the messengers, Mark L. Prophet and Elizabeth Clare Prophet. I'll be playing a little bit of one of the sermons or one of the services that Elizabeth Clare Prophet held back in 1988 in Wyoming at one of the gathering spaces. And she just talks a little bit about the channelings and the messages of El Morya. That'll be at the end of the episode. And we'll have some other good videos throughout this as well. He represents the godly attributes of courage, certainty, power, forthrightness, self-reliance, dependability, faith, and initiative. These are the qualities of the father principle or divine masculine, the statesman, the executive, the ruler, because he has ably outpicted these essential virtues. El Morya has, through many embodiments, worn the crown of authority, ruling many kingdoms wisely and well. His rulership has not been that of a dictator, demanding his subjects submit to his human will, but rather his interpretation of government is God over men, and his concept of true statesman is God's over men. He inspires in his subjects illuminated obedience to the holy will of God. Now, and also too, when we're talking about God in any of these episodes or in any of these contexts, we're talking about the force that is all permeating and is not able to be identified as one singular man. A consciousness, energy that far exceeds any terminology or any type of exclamation into a box. The force that is within every single thing that could ever be and will be. Pure awareness. That's right. At first, I thought you said pure awesomeness. I was like, yep. Definitely pure awesomeness. It's funny how my perception went to that. All right, so now we're going to dive into and talk about El Morya's embodiments. And again, for everyone out there, the first ray is the blue ray of God's will. And then the principles that they said that he enacts and embodies are the main principles of the blue ray. So here we go. El Morya's embodiments. So there is many embodiments to the present hour from the ascended state. Beloved El Morya has been actively engaged in service to the light. As the son of Enoch, who walked with God and was not, for God took him in the ritual of the ascension, as one of the seers who penetrated into the higher octaves of light in the ancient land of Ur of the Chaldees, and as a native of Persia who worshipped the one God, Ahura Mazda. In these and during many other embodiments, he learned to experiment with divine electricities, becoming increasingly aware of the spiritual power flowing through man. Later, he became accomplished in his constructive use of faux hots, the mysterious electric power of cosmic consciousness, that impelling vital force, which when called into action by divine fiat, moves the evolutions of a universe, a galactic or solar system, or even a human being, from the beginning to the completion of its mission. The first life that he embodied and walked in as a human being was Abraham. El Morya was embodied as Abraham in 2100 BC. the first Hebrew patriarch, the prototype and progenitor of the 12 tribes of Israel. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all trace their origins back to Abraham. Although scholars once widely assumed that he was either a mystical figure or a nomadic or semi-nomadic Semite, archaeological finds since World War have corroborated the picture of Abraham that is given in the Bible itself. In the answer to the call of the Lord, Abraham left the leading Sumerian city of Ur, forsaking the culture and cults of Mesopotamia at a time when Sumerian civilization was at its height. The Lord told him to journey to a land that he would show him and promised to make of him a great nation. Interesting. So I didn't even realize that Abraham was during Babylon or Sumeria. So the Lord told to him to journey to a land that he would show him and promise to make him a great nation. The book of Genesis describes him as a man rich in flocks and herds who commands a private army and is recognized by neighboring chieftains as a mighty prince. Wow, this is getting intriguing. This is great history of our real history in our timeline that's not truly talked about in the scriptures. So think about this. Abraham came into legend, in the beginning of the Bible. It talks about how Abraham came from Samaria. So that means things that he learned in Samaria, he then also brought with him as Genesis took place. And he brought the flocks and herds from Samaria. Intriguing. Abraham is the archetype of the man of faith. He received the supreme test of faith when God told him to sacrifice his son Isaac. Abraham had waited for many years for his wife Sarah to bear Isaac, who was to be a fulfillment of the Lord's promise to multiply Abraham's seed as the stars of the heaven. Nevertheless, Abraham obeyed, and he raised his knife to kill his son. The angel of the Lord told him to stop, and Abraham offered a ram in his place. Because of Abraham's personal relationship with God and his explanatory faith, both Christian and Muslim scriptures describe him as the friend of God, El-Khalil, in the Arabic language of the Quran. Inscribed on the Jaffa Gafi, the Jaffa Gate in the holy city of Jerusalem, is the passage from the Quran, "There is no God but Allah, and Abraham is beloved of him." Wow, how intriguing. Abraham. And faith is a big test, especially in the material realm. You may think like, oh wow, it's so crazy. Like, why would he want to sacrifice his son? It's not that he ever was going to sacrifice his son from God's perspective. The creator or the angels, they knew when to come in to stop him. So it's not like they were just like, all right, we want you to do a sacrifice and fulfill that sacrifice, and we're not going to stop you. If you know the story, one of the archangels came in and they stopped him. That was intelligently done. Trial for the human being to go through to see if they could release their ego and have faith in a command from the higher spirit and to listen and follow that. Since he listened and followed it, the angel came in and intervened from the death happening. Sacrifices are fully happening, and there's no intervention from the angels. Now that's a different story. So we got to be very discerning about our stories, how we're putting together these stories, and what we are relating them to as well. So we have Melchior. Returning as Melchior, one of the three wise men of the East, he followed the star that portended the birth of the best of his seed, who would fulfill all the promises of God unto the spiritual descendants. The Master has said, long ago, when my name was known as Melchior, and I came with Kuthumi and Juai Kul as one of the wise men of the East, as I came riding upon a camel to lay my offerings at the feet of the Christ, I knew then that one day I should be devoted to the service of God's will. And so, beholding his Son as the epitome of God's will, I journeyed to him with heart full of love to plight to him my hand and heart and head in the divine dimension. I pledged it all to the young babe, and I remembered and recalled the will of God as it manifested in the angelic ministrants. Song come through the heavens with paeans of praise to God, glory to God in the highest. How cool is that? So he had a life as Abraham, one of the three wise men, and then King Arthur. So King Arthur, guru of the mystery school at Camelot, guarded the inner teachings. He summoned knights of the Round Table and ladies of the court to quest the Holy Grail and to attain through initiation the mysteries of Christ. While he wore the crown, unity, order, and peace prevailed in England. Saint Germain was embodied as Merlin the Magician, mystic counselor of King Arthur, and his knights of the Grail quest. Boy, I don't know what it is, but I always get excited when I talk about this. King Arthur. And not only that, but we learned that not only was Morya as King Arthur on the planet at this time, but so was Saint Germain as Merlin. And they were hand in hand with each other at the same time on this planet. That is so amazing. Wow. Saint Germain will be coming up in about 6 episodes because he is the 7th ray Chohan. So we'll be talking about Merlin and the other lifetimes that Saint Germain has had as well. Boy, we're getting into the exciting stuff now. All right, let's continue. And then we're actually going to watch some stuff about the Mahi Grail and King Arthur. So Thomas Becket, I'm pretty sure we've heard of Thomas Becket maybe from history class a little bit. He was connected to, and he was the Lord Chancellor and advisor of King Henry II. He became Archbishop of Canterbury, foreseeing that his duties as Archbishop would inevitably conflict with the king's will. He resigned the chancellorship against the king's wish. Becket turned his administrative abilities and diplomatic finesse as a disguised chancellor into ardor and devotion as archbishop. He became a strong supporter of the papacy, and he had once been of the king and freely excommunicated courtiers and nobles for their unlawful use of church property and other breaches. In the face of the king's intent to imprison him, Becket exiled himself to France for 6 years. He returned to England following a partial reconciliation with the king, only to begin quarreling with him anew. Yeah, it's typically how it's gonna go. You know, if you're someone that likes to live by the will of the higher spirit, and you find yourself in a position where maybe you're working for or you're underneath and you're with folks that like to live by their own ego or live by their own will, such as a dictator or king of that time, you can find yourself conflicting because you're truly there to help serve everyone, but they're there to help serve their own ego. So it makes a lot of sense. So then on December 29th, 1170, he was brutally murdered in Canterbury Cathedral when 4 knights of the court took literally the king's remarks that he wished to be rid of his turbulent priest. Uncompromising to the end, Becket told the knights, if all the swords in England were pointing at my head, you would never make me betray either God or the Pope. More than 500 healing miracles were attributed to him only a few years after his death, and he was canonicized 3 years later. Wow. I mean, what else are we living for here on this planet, you know? Are we living here for the truth, for the highest good of everyone? Or are we here just to bow and bend our knee to egoic authority? Truly think about that. So Thomas More, another figure that we may have heard in our history class as well. Morya was also embodied as Sir Thomas More in 1478 to 1535, the man for all seasons. More's deep devotion to God caused him at one time to consider a religious vocation and to practice extraordinary austerities for over 4 years to test his own self-discipline. He decided to marry, however, and his wife and 4 children proved to be his greatest joy and his sole comfort in days to come. Their famed estate at Chelsea housed Thomas's entire family, including 11 grandchildren. Over the years, More's little utopia, as he called it, became a center of learning and culture, likened by Erasmus to Plato's Academy, a home of goodwill to which came the most learned men of the day, even the king himself, for counsel and for comfort. At Chelsea, More wrote the famous work entitled Utopia, a witty expose of the superficiality of English life and the flagrant vices of English law. 1529, Sir Thomas More was appointed by Henry VIII, Lord Chancellor of England and Keeper of the Great Seal. In spite of many honors and achievements, More sought no man's esteem. He was known for his promptness, efficiency, and even-handed justice. He remained sensitive to the needs of the common people by daily walking the back streets of London to inquire into the lives of the poor. Sir Thomas devoted himself to the duties with the utmost zeal until Henry, desirous of but lacking a male heir to the throne, declared his marriage to Catherine of Aragon and announced his intent to marry Anne Boleyn. Since the divorce was without papal approval and directly opposed to the laws of the church, More refused to support the king's decision. In 1532, at the height of his career, he resigned his office and retired to Chelsea, where, greatly concerned with his heresies of Luther's revolt, he continued his writing in defense of the Catholic faith. Without friends and without office, More and his family lived in abject poverty. Nevertheless, Henry has been insulted at the Chancellor's public disapproval of him. The king therefore sought to defame More and thus restore his royal image. When he refused to take the oath of supremacy, More was imprisoned in the Tower of London. 15 months later, he was convicted of treason on perjury evidence. He was beheaded on Tower Hill, July 6, 1535, affirming himself the king's good servant, but God's first. He was canonized for 400 years later, in 1935. Thomas More was known for his wit. Author Anthony Kenny observes that More is the first person to embody peculiarly English ideal that the good man meets adversity and crisis, not with silent resignation, nor with a sublime state of principle, but with a joke. One of More's most recent biographers has very well said, More was never more witty than he was less amused. Wow. If you guys notice the theme here, overthrowing authority or going against the grain of authority. So you listen to these kind of lifetimes. You think about Yeshua or Jesus, he didn't live a pretty life that was very peaceful all the time. You know, he lived a life where he faced a lot of adversity. He faced a lot of projections. He faced a lot of egos that wanted to literally kill him and did end up killing him. You know, we're talking to the highest degree of like violence and negativity. You know, these figures that become ascended masters, they're not having butterfly and cakewalks in these human lives. Like they're really having to anchor in and activate their vitality and their will of God through the biggest depths of ego, to the level that these egos want to kill them and end up killing a lot of them, but still finding the joy and the beauty in being of service. So if you know people in your life that are truly living this type of life right here, please give your gratitude to them. Give your love to them, because it's not easy in this world. All right, so he was also Akbar the Great, 1542 1605, founder of the Mughal Empire in India, and the greatest of its rulers. Thomas More, the Irish poet in 1779 and 1852. You must have really liked that name, Thomas More. Very intriguing. And then Morya Khan, his final embodiment. Morya was born a Rajput prince in India and later became a monk, frequenting the retreats of the Himalayas. As the Master M, he together with Kafumi and Jwa Ku attempted to acquaint mankind with the workings of the law and hierarchy through the writings of Mme.H.P. Blavatsky. Together with the Master K.H. and Saint Germain, he founded the oh my gosh, I love these words. Theosophical Society. I was like trying to say 3 different words. Theosophical Society. Morya ascended in 1898 and continues his great work for God government on earth through the flame of goodwill and his embodied chelaes. Man, how cool is that? You even have the year that he ascended from the earth plane, 1898. Now, when it says continues great work for God government, it's saying like the unification and the interconnection of the clarity between spirit and government and showing the harmony of it. And then how you can have harmony with that in your life. All right, so the meaning of his name, El Morya. It's also the name of Mariah. The Ma stands for the maternal influences of God. The Ra stands for the Father, the masculine influences of God, called by the ancient Egyptians Ra. We call it Ray today, as in a ray from the sun. Yah is the flaming Yad, or the power of the Holy Spirit, the third part of the Trinity of divine consciousness. El in the ancient Hebrew refers to the Elohim, or to God. So in the name Morya El, or Mariah El, we find a nameless one who deliberately chose a name to glorify God, and to whom was given a new name, which he used, which glorifies God. And analyzing many of the names of the great ones, even Sri Magra and others before, we find that always the names have been identified with the Godhead, because the individuals themselves have been absorbed into the Godhead. You want to know a fun example of that you guys could understand, since you guys know me, is Marcus ChristoLight. ChristoLight is representative of the Christ light. So when ChristoLight, that name came to me spiritually in my human journey, when I was going through a negative time in my life, I, in a way, became absorbed with the Godhead, with Creator during that time period in a deeper way than I was before. Now, I'd already had a connection with, the Christ consciousness, but once that name had came to me during that time of heartbreak in my life, that was when I was actually initiated from 2022 and on to now into this really high vibrational pathway that you guys have seen me in consistently for years now, of creating content, hosting retreat 2022, once I decided to take on this name ChristoLight with my first name Marcus. So that's just an example for me to you guys of what it is that they were just saying here in this text. When they say that when they have identified themselves with being one with the Godhead, then that's when the name changes. And then there's some type of name added on to that person's human identity that indicates that they are either on the path of Christ light or that they are connected to the source God energy and they are devoting their life to that source energy or to the Christ light. And it's all it's all rightfully so. In your relationship to the Creator, you're going to know between you and the Creator if you're on your Christ path or if you are devoted to that path truly. And that's where not proving yourself comes in, but just being the embodiment and being the example. All right. Morya's mission today, Chief of the Darjeeling Council, is the hierarch of the Temple of Goodwill in the etheric plane over the city of Darjeeling, India, in the foothills of the Himalayas. This retreat is a mandala and a force field that is used by the solar hierarchies to release increments of cosmic energy to the planet. Together with the members of the Darjeeling Council, the Brothers of the Diamond Heart who served at this retreat under Morya assist mankind by organizing, developing, directing, and implementing the will of God as the foundation for all successful organized movements. Morya says, "My service then continues from the Darjeeling retreat of the Brotherhood, where I am counseling with other brothers of the will of God. So many of the evolutions of Earth who serve in the governments of the nations, who serve as teachers and scientists and musicians, and those who control the flow of the will of God, that is power, that is the abundance of supply. The will of God is applied in all levels of human endeavor, for the will of God is the blueprint of every project. It is the foundation of every task, the skeleton of your body. It is physical energy, it is etheric fire. The will of God is the fiery diamond in your heart. The diamond shining mind of God is the very heart of an endeavor. Public servants, world, community leaders, and holders of public offices are schooled between embodiments and in their finer bodies during sleep to renew the charge of Morya's thrust for a purpose and to refresh their understanding of the intricacies of the will of God in politics, religion, business, education. Ascended and unascended masters and their chelis meet at Morya's retreat frequently to discuss national and international problems and the means to their solution. It was here that Ascended Master El Morya received President John F. Kennedy after his passing in 1963. Intriguing. What? So you're telling me that the soul of John F. Kennedy joined into the Blu-ray Council with El Morya? How cool is that? Founding of the Summit Lighthouse. So during the 20s and 30s, El Morya worked with Nicholas and Helena Roerich, who set forth his writings in numerous published works. He founded the Summit Lighthouse in 1958 in Washington, D.C. for the purpose of publishing the teachings of the Ascended Masters given to the messengers Mark and Elizabeth Prophet, a continuation of his efforts in so many incarnations to establish the concept of God government on earth. The calling of the messengers is manifested in manifold endeavors, sponsored by the Darjeeling Council, the establishing of the Order of the Keepers of the Flame fraternity by Saint Germain in 1961, to set forth graded instruction in cosmic law, the founding of Montessori International by Mother Mary, Jesus, and Kuthumi, based on the principles of Morya Montessori, and including the teachings of the Ascended Masters, the founding of Summit University, and the setting of the Soul of God upon Church Universal and Triumphant, the mystery school of all the masters of the Great White Brotherhood and the community of souls ascended and unascended on the path of initiation, east and west, in Christ and Buddha. Wow. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a pause. On the reading. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and watch a video. And Lisa Renee is the author of AscensionGlossary.com, which I have referenced many times throughout this series, and I will be pulling up here in a moment as well. But this is by Lisa Renee, and she's talking about the Mahi Grail King, and she's also talking about King Arthur. So this is pretty cool, and this is going to give you a different perspective about King Arthur.
Maji Grail King. The indigo lines are referred to as Maji Grail lines through the original 12 tribes that were created as a part of the plan that became the Covenant of Paliador to rescue the lost souls of Tara, which would be made easier during the Ascension cycle. They have come to Earth during the Ascension cycle because they were asked to come in order to be the way showers into the next stage, and to fulfill their mission to restore consciousness liberation and spiritual freedom on behalf of the Earth and her inhabitants. The 12 tribes were designed as human guardians for this realm, and each tribe had their Maji Grail King and collective indigo family to help embody and transmit the higher frequencies that were necessary to help support the planetary grid. The inner circle of the 12 Grail Kings and their respective missions were awakened in the first ascension waves to begin the process of embodiment of the planetary ascension templates, shifting the timelines, and these groups are the ascension prototypers for the spectrum of frequencies included within all of the entire 12 tribes together. Founder records. The founder records are also referred to as the Emerald Covenant CDT holographic plates, which originally belonged to all of the human 12 tribes and were the principal spiritual teachings that were commonly understood during the Lemurian and early Atlantean timelines. Each holographic disc was protected and administered to, and by an assigned Magi Grail King on the Earth, who acted as the main guardian of the planetary stargate of his tribe. The Magi Grail King assigned spiritually trained members of the Essene tribes as keepers of the Law of One knowledge, to carry this sacred wisdom through multiple timelines and to protect related information for access during a later time cycle, such as transmitting Essene translations of human historical timelines and galactic wars over the seeding of the 12 tribes, and hiding them within many crystals and other objects that are buried in the earth. War over holographic discs. Thus, the sacred knowledge included in all 12 of these holographic discs that make up the Emerald Founder records, are the ascension mechanics that describe the unity principles of the Law of One, have been violently fought over by many negative intruding groups. These negative alien agenda groups competing for Earth domination have repeatedly sought to either control humans as puppets for carrying out their agendas, or massacre the Magi priest kings and their human tribe team members. Lightworker persecution memories include being hunted down as a part of the Christo's family mission and remembering lifetimes in the 12 tribe Essene lineages that have currently incarnated during the ascension cycle as indigos. The negative alien agenda groups seek to gain full domination of Earth and beyond, through gaining unrestrained access to all of the Emerald Founder records, ancient builder technology and all related sacred knowledge that is ultimately the divine birthright of every angelic human being. 1. 12 Magi Grail Kings. During the Dark Aeon, the Albion light body and cosmic Christos consciousness holders of that holographic architecture were placed in the lowest vibration of the Earth density and remained asleep there until the crystal star families returned to awaken them during the ascension cycle. As guardians, these are the original 12 Magi Grail Kings and assorted Christos family members we have returned for, by awakening the Albion in Earth, Tara and Gaia, in order to ensure they would be able to wake up fully, help the planetary ascension and then return back to their spiritual home in the God worlds. Christos Solar Dragon Kings. Christos Solar Dragon Kings are also referred to as the Albion Kings or Magi Grail Kings, that rule the constellations and star maps that make up the planetary grid system, Albion light body, which have been intentionally designed to protect the 12 Essene tribes and stargates on the Earth. The Christos Solar Dragon Kings were placed in stasis sleep in the planetary body during the commencement of the Dark Aeon that began during the Luciferian Rebellion. Through the Solar Rishi return, the Earth has reached the stage during the ascension cycle when the Christos Solar Dragons are being awakened through the transmission of rainbow dragon breath carried into their emerald crystal heart. They are being called into planetary service by our holy God-parent, the cosmic founders of the Emerald Order. We have waited eons for the planet to raise her frequency to the level that activated the hidden emerald crystal heart in the Albion light body, which was only made possible in the mass reflection of the spiritual love that is being expressed and shared in the collective hearts of humanity.
All right. So that was Lisa Renee. She is the author of ascensionglossary.com as well as Energetic Synthesis. You guys can just look that up on Google and you'll find all that you need to know. She is just a great guide and great educator of our multidimensional human self and anything. You know, it's good for us to know what's going on, what we're a part of, what we exist in, because we're a part of it. And we all do have the free will right to know what it is that we are a part of and what we exist in as the highest level of existence, like literally creation, existing. Especially the Chohans, they have different locations on the earth where you can actually access either physical or energetic gateways to their retreat temples. So El Morya's retreat temple of Goodwill is located in Yosemite Valley. Or wait, hold on. His second retreat is located in Yosemite Valley, California. His first retreat, which is not even saying, so let me click on it. I'm pretty sure it's in Wyoming, but I want to make sure. It's really taking its time today. We will get to it though. There we go. The Temple of Goodwill. Oh yes, this is the one that's in the Himalayas above the city of Darjeeling, India. So his main retreat is in the etheric template or the energetic grid location in the foothills of the Himalayas above Darjeeling, India. The retreat is a glistening white building in Moorish architecture, square with minarets at the four corners and a large central flame-shaped dome. The walls are as thick as a medieval castle. The apertures are also flame or dome-shaped, delicately shaded in a pale blue, as are the doorways. The apertures atop the minarets and the carvings that mark the divisions of the four stories of the retreat. As we enter the headquarters of the inner world government, on the first floor, we are shown the main auditorium. At the far end in the focus of the diamond heart, ministered unto by the Devas and the brothers of the diamond heart. On a raised altar, there is a pale blue diamond with a delicate blue flame encompassing the white flame that is visible in the center of the diamond. Wow, there's so much. I mean, I suggest you guys look into this stuff, because if I go into all of it, it'll take about 3 hours. And here's a drawing of the retreat that Mark Prophet drew, Elizabeth Prophet's husband. I mean, as you guys can see, there's a lot of detail. It even tells you what goes on each floor. The second floor, study, library, meeting rooms. The sternness of El Morya. Well, yeah, anyone that's carrying a lot of divine masculine, purity force, they're going to be very bold and straightforward of truth. But all right, so yeah, India, and then the second retreat space that's in the US is El Capitan in Yosemite Valley, California. Then if you want to connect with El Morya, you can use blue flowers or the blue rose. And you can also connect with the sandalwood fragrance as well. We'll give you guys some crystals as well. I mean, of course, Blu-ray crystals. So we're talking like sodalite. We're talking lapis lazuli, turquoise. What's another really good one that I like that's blue? Chrysocolla. That's the one that I was trying to think of. Chrysocolla is like fantastic for El Morya energy. Then of course you can even throw in like labradorite, things of that nature. All right. Now we're going to continue still. We got more to talk about here. We got to talk about King Arthur. And we're going to get down into the nitty gritty of what this whole King Arthur thing is about in our history, beyond the movies and the fictional aspects of it. All right. Some of y'all might not have known, but as they say in this picture to the right, which is by Elizabeth Prophet, King Arthur, protector of the Sophionic Grail. What does that mean? What is the Sophionic Grail? Well, the Sophia is the Divine Mother. It is the force that permeates all throughout the universe. So you have, the Divine Father energy, which is the force that basically stabilizes the creation and allows it to be creation at its own free will. And then you have the feminine, which is that free will, which dances all throughout the whole entire creation and experiences everything and weaves in and out of it. That's the Holy Spirit. That's the Sophia. That is the Divine Mother. So you have the Father that stabilizes the field and allows it to continue to exist for eternity. And then within that stabilization, you have the Mother flowing and dancing through all dimensions. That's the Sophia. So when you're a protector of the Sophionic Grail, you're a protector of this balance, the wholeness of life, the free will of all creation. So you uphold that. You uphold the truth, and you bring the truth to others through your embodiment and through your teachings. So that is who King Arthur is. So about 1400 YA, which is, I believe for them, before Christ or after. It's after, I believe. Yeah. They term it a little bit differently. I think it's like Yeshua after YA. So 1400 years after Yeshua. The invasion of the UK take over the territory and the 11th Stargate. So that's a whole different thing too. The 11th Stargate is located in the UK. So there's 12 Stargates on our planet, as you guys heard in the Lisa Renee video. Each Stargate holds a connection to a universal aspect that allows the organic God force to be able to be present, or the Christ Sophia to be present on this planet. If our Stargates are blocked, if they are infiltrated with negative energy, then we are not able to manifest the Christ consciousness on the planet properly. So that is where you see a false Christ or an antichrist manifestation. Now, we've been in a time where we've been at war over these Stargates. The positive forces and negative forces have been trying to take control of these 12 Stargates. There's a Stargate in Iran and Iraq, believe it or not. There's a Stargate in the UK. There is a Stargate all the way up in Antarctica. There's a Stargate in Egypt, There's a Stargate in Mount Shasta, and there's some more as well. Sarasota, Florida. So when you think about that, you think about why there's wars, why there's all these things going on in certain territories. It's not just because of human ego. It actually is way deeper than human ego. The human into these stargates and the forces that are trying to take control of these stargates, such as Iran. So the stories that they're telling you about the presidents and all these things about countries, those are the shallow side of what's really going on. That's just what they want to pitch to you, so you can go focus on something. But when you focus on the self and God and Christ, and you're becoming aware, and through that awareness, you're able to detach, and you're also able to anchor in more light inside of your vessel instead of being distracted by the chaos of the world. So this was about the 11th Stargate in the UK. They tried to take out King Arthur and his support team. The false king of tyranny replaces the rulership. King Arthur is a stasis in UK. The divine plan of the Holy Father in compassionate action is to restore balance and unity within the eternal light of cosmic Christos consciousness, in which all of humanity is connected to the solar logos and star systems within the Albion light body. We come from the stars, for we are the stars. This holds the profound meaning of the return of the benevolent and rightful Christos, solar king to planet Earth, the restoration of the beloved Mahi Grail King Arthur, the resurrection, the resurrected solar Michael, anointed Christ, is rising to be the protector of the Holy Mother in Sophionic Grail, which is the cosmic heart principle of Earth. King Arthur's cosmic consciousness body is directly connected to the family of Michael. Now, when they say the family of Michael, they're talking about Archangel Michael. They're talking about the blue ray, the first ray, the God's will, who are the protectors of the 11th dimensional gates of Avion and Avalon of Lyra upon the negative agenda invasion. So he can be considered the patriarch of the Michael Avion genetics and the Seraphim memories throughout the time. So the Michael Avion genetics, this is talking about Lyran beings of the blue ray. The Avians are the bird beings of Lyra. So he's talking about how King Arthur was a representative and anchor of these 11th dimensional Avian, Lyran, Archangel Michael codes that were trying to be brought down into this planetary grid to help heal and activate the grid from the corruption. Due to that, that's why he fought many resistance and why they tried taking him out along with his team. Same thing as Yeshua and his disciples. They tried to take them out. So you think about it as a common theme. These entities know when there's a powerful force, a positivity coming, and they try to do anything they can to stop it and resist it, including killing. This might be a lot for some people right now to wake up to, but we're waking up and it's time. So the Christos Paladorian Covenant. During the timeline of Guardian Yeshua, and later on King Arthur, the Essene Christos Templar team attempted to protect the Giza Stargate and traveled to Stonehenge, which is the 11th Stargate, misaligned to Nibiru. Nibiru is where the Anunnaki are from. So you think about the Anunnaki, you have good and bad Anunnaki, so to say. You have Enki, Enlil. And then Enlil is the one that decided he wanted to create humans as slaves to mine gold for their atmosphere. And that is all he wanted the humans to be that he created. Now, he didn't create all humans or the first human. That's a lie, the history that they try to tell. They just created their own versions of humans and then had their own purpose with the humans. Humans are created from multiple different galactic races, and then they get encoded with their own genetics of that galactic race. So, continuing on. The Guardian mission to protect the Stonehenge and Giza gates from Niburian control and to avert pole shift was passed on to many of the current Christo starseeds and indigos on the Earth during the current timeline of the Ascension cycle, in which we have finally succeeded. Think about that last part there. It says, we have finally succeeded. That's why we're in the activation of the Age of Aquarius now. That's why we are accelerating in our awakening as a collective. That is why we are accelerating in technological advancement as well as spiritual access. And in reference, you and I and a lot of us, we are those star seeds and indigos of the Christos that is on the Earth during this time for this purpose. So as the Niburian control over the planet is released, the Guardian host and ground crew can correct the checkerboard mutation and reclaim the fire letter sequences and genetic time codes that were used to set up reversals in the planetary network. Checkerboard mutation is basically that webbing or that false grid that has literally divided everything into making us believe that everything is consciously separate and divided. It's pretty deep. Like, there's a lot of programmings that are on this planet. Think about how divided we are mentally. So the Paladorian activation. This year's Paladorian activations have been especially relevant to the Mahi Grail King Arthur timeline, as those in this team were the last of the Christos Essene Templar representatives on Earth that had direct knowledge of the Arc technologies to open stargates. They were entrusted with the Arc tools and Arc box that was given to the surviving Mahi Grail Kings right after the devastation of the Atlantean Colaticism. However, the Pillar of Power activation, which includes the inner rod and staff light body configuration, a perfect inner male and female balance, comes the living consciousness potentials of the Godhead that is embodied during Christic hierogamic union, in which the outer arc tools are no longer necessary. So it's basically saying that, yes, there are going to be tools and there are going to be things to help us be able to access and reflect and remind us of our Christo consciousness within. But the goal is to get to the point where you embody and integrate so much of this knowledge and wisdom through your practices of life, through your mentalism, that you no longer need any tools outside of you to remind you of it. And then it just becomes a conscious daily life of free will interaction, where you just realize that you are this spiritual being in this moment that is connecting with another energy out of your free will. And you're just continuously making choices from your free will, interacting with cause and effects. And that's how life is and how you see life, instead of everything else. And then lastly, here I'll read also the Ruby Sun DNA. King Arthur was embodied in a 10-strand Ruby Sun DNA body, which was designed to help restore the female Sophionic sapphire codes in the solar star chakra, which exists about 6 inches above the crown. This diamond sun light body part was damaged on the planet during the Nephilim hybridization and when draconian Essenes are incarnated into the human body, or draconian essences. Wow, talking about the Nephilim? I'm sure some of y'all know about Nephilim from the Bible. Nephilim are the hybridized giants between the humans and the fallen angels. But you can say, humans and the Anunnaki, or the humans and the Draconians. You don't have to say fallen angels, because fallen angels is kind of very broad. We'll go into the real specifics. That we're talking about Anunnaki, talking about Draconians and reptilians. And when draconian essences are incarnated into the human body, the solar star is held by the female crystal heart rose staff codes and are responsible for receiving communication directly from our Christos avatar self. King Arthur's embodiment returned the sapphire solar star communication with our avatar. So this is talking about the connection. Oh boy. This is talking about the connection between your human self and your higher self. And this is what this is saying, is like King Arthur and these other ascended beings, they came here on the mission to help clear that connection for you, for us. So we, in this present moment, as we're living on the earth right now, can have a clear connection with our higher self and God. So think about that. What we're reading, they did for us right now in this time that we're living. So then helped bring the communication with our avatar and supported the return of the corrected universal human 5-star atom, the diamond sun template, back into the Albion light body after the Sumerian and Egyptian invasion. The Grail line of the Ruby Sun DNA are also referred to as indigo children and hold a hybrid diamond sun DNA template that is the result of hybridization made between the Nephilim and Elohim genetics. Representatives of the guardian host, such as King Arthur and his Templar team, as well as the guardian Akhenaten, and yes, Akhenaten from Kemet or Egypt, the Pharaoh line, Akhenaten, the father of Tutankhamun, which I'm not even going to say anything about that, chose to embody in a Ruby Sun DNA template when they came to the earth in order to help reclaim and restore the fire letters and time vector codes that were stolen from the Grail line specifically. The DNA template was hijacked, in which its coding was used to engineer the 9/11 timelines. Oh snap! Now we're tying 9/11 into this. Yes, King Arthur is tied into the 9/11 timeline. That's how timelines work. Timelines are very intricately threaded. They will do things that will then help transpire something 50 years later in the timeline, because they know the timeline and they know that they have to do a certain thing at a certain time mark in order for us to be on the trajectory of a certain timeline. I'm telling you guys, this is not for everyone. When you really get into this knowledge, you become responsible of, really having integrity, not feeding into these type of timelines that I'm talking about, and also being in this live moment of having an ego in the midst of all this. So the remaining pure lineages of the Ruby Sun DNA imprint exist on the Earth and off-planet, to which they are in alignment with the cosmic sovereign law of one. In service to others, potential evolution to be able to choose spiritual freedom for themselves and to be released from reincarnation into the AI timelines, into the lower densities. And we'll leave it there for that text. There is so much more that you guys can connect with on this. I highly recommend doing your own studying. I mean, it gets really deep. Like, talk about artificial timeline wars. And what that is like giving people a false history and keeping them in it. of like, oh, Christopher Columbus discovered America and all these things. That's a false timeline that you're living in if you're believing in those things as your truth. So then you got to find out what's the real pieces to the organic timeline of our real history. And that's why, they'll make movies about King Arthur, but they won't tell you who King Arthur really is, why he did all this stuff, and what this stuff actually means. And that's how they get people into this like kind of fantasified timeline. So instead of like connecting to the real authentic King Arthur and what he meant to our timeline, you're connecting with this fantasy Hollywood version of some character that just had a sword and was cool because it was medieval like times or whatever. That's the kind of implant that they give you with the programming instead of this right here. And it's for a purpose and reason. Same thing with Yeshua. They do it to Yeshua and everyone else as well. They give you a fantasy version of him instead of the real thing that was a part of our history. Whew. This episode is exactly what I was feeling it to be. Well, so yeah, you guys can check this out on ascensionglossary.com. And it's also down below in the description as well. And now with that, we're going to go ahead and watch our final video of the episode. It'll lead us off to our journey of who El Morya is and how he is the first ray Chohan, or Ascended Master, chief leader of this first ray, the blue ray of God's will. You guys enjoy, and thank you guys for being a part of this.
Ascended Masters are guides and way showers of wisdom for us to learn from and show you the greatest progress for your path. El Morya is an Ascended Master who lived in complete obedience to the divine will. Join us as we discover the teachings of El Morya and how it will help us fulfill our divine destiny. In the many lives that El Morya lived, he lived in accordance to the will of the divine. When El Morya was Abraham, he was promised by God great blessings if he obeyed him. His obedience to God is well known to Jews and Christians, and he was known as the Father of Nations. He was blessed by God for such obedience. Then El Morya lived as King Arthur, a ruler with mythical infamy and character. King Arthur created the Table Round, a brotherhood embodying honor and bravery. This brotherhood, headed by King Arthur, is known for their loyalty to the kingdom. They treasure and honor respect, justice, courage, and honesty. It is also believed that he lived as Thomas Becket and Thomas More. Thomas Becket was an archbishop in the time of King Henry II. Becket stood by his principle even when it was in conflict with the king. Thomas More also lived a principled life in the reign of Henry VIII. He too was in conflict with the King of England. Both Becket and More were executed as they stood by what they believed. El Morya's obedience to the divine will was unwavering, even in the face of great peril and death. In the 1800s, El Morya was known to work with some unascended masters to found the Theosophical Society. They teach the higher truths to humankind. It was believed that he ascended to the spirit realm in 1896. And even when he was in the spirit realm, he continues to teach humanity to seek and obey the will of the divine. In every lifetime that he has lived, Morya is driven by his faith in the source and in the divine blueprint. Today, he is known as one of the ascended masters who guide humans in finding their own divinity and fulfilling their purpose. He is the Chohan of the first ray, the blue ray of the divine will and protection. What is a Chohan? What does the first ray mean? Chohan literally means chief or lord in Sanskrit. They are spiritual leaders in an ascended state after achieving so much for their contribution to the betterment of mankind. We learn from the Ascended Masters the 7 rainbow rays embodying divine qualities that will make us whole. The blue ray is the first ray. It is attributed to the will of the divine, faithfulness, and divine power. Morya, together with Lanto, Paul the Venetian, Serapis Bey, Nada, and Saint Germain, makes up the 7 Chohans of the earth. The blue ray reminds us of the divine power. We are encouraged to remain faithful, determined, and courageous as we go through the path to fulfill our spiritual life. Undeniably, we harbor old pains and fears. These hinder us from taking the necessary steps towards our spiritual growth. In the words of Morya, the path of self-healing is the path of self-knowledge. We need to know who we really are, not as individuals separate from the world, but as a being that is connected to the great web of the universe. It is with our knowledge of our whole being, of what our role is, that we can start accepting everything that makes us who we are. Accepting our true self lets us heal from the old pains and the new griefs that hinder us from exemplifying our infinite capabilities. The lives of Morya showed to us the way to know our purpose in life. But he reminds us to think of this life purpose as founded by the divine will and not by worldly will. Morya shows to us the blessings we can have when we put our absolute faith in the will of the divine. Morya wants us to work on our surrender to the designs of the Source. He knows that because we have been exposed to the material world, it will be hard to let go of our human will. He said it is in letting go that liberation is obtained. When we let go of the past, of our own worldly will, we free ourselves for the blessings to come and fill our life. Furthermore, when we embody the teachings of his works in life, we will learn to trust the love and wisdom of the divine. We will learn to ask for divine guidance. We will become more aware of the divine intervention. We will learn to pay attention to the signs from the universe that tell us what we should do to fulfill our life purpose. Morya also encourages us to strengthen our connection with the divine. When we meditate and commune with the divine, we can open and enter the spirit realm to discover why we are here in this lifetime. Connect and commune with Ascended Master Morya, and he will help you embody the attributes of the blue ray. He will guide you as you strengthen your faith and do your works to achieve and accomplish the will of God. There will be challenges along the way, but with the right guidance, you will be led to the highest state of your spirituality. Remember the words of Moira: life is a physical manifestation of the spiritual journey. Everything that you have experienced will lead you to your spiritual path. Being brought here by the blue ray of Moira is a sign that you are about to learn of your divine purpose. Keeping your faith in His love and guidance will give us courage to fulfill our reason for existence, even when we inevitably face challenges along the way. Embodying the attributes of the blue ray will give us the power to grab our own fate and live in accordance to the designs of the Source. Moira showed us the greatness we can achieve. Crossing paths with Moira in this time of your life is a sign that you are ready for the plans of the divine. Aren't you excited? Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos about Ascended Masters, angel signs, and music and guided meditations.
All right. Wow. Well, I definitely trust with all of the information and perspectives and ways of information sharing today that we have definitely came to a conclusion of what this figure Morya is and what he represents when it comes to this first blue ray of this universal creation. Now, if you guys have any questions whatsoever, feel free to replay this content anytime. There's site references for you guys to utilize and to develop your own deeper connection with this Ascended Master, First Ray, Chohan, Morya. And how amazing is it to really discover the deeper facts and the deeper wisdom behind figures like Arthur, Thomas More, Abraham even. You know, hearing a little bit more about Abraham's life before the Bible scripture even started. Hearing about how he came from Samaria, where Babylon was, and brought followers with him and helped bring his followers to a new beginning, a new civilization of life. I mean, how incredible is that? You think about it now and today, I would say that's kind of equal to, instead of following the direction of where the world is going, the division, the hate, the fear, the war, things of that nature, instead of following all that, you and the people that believe in what you're doing and what they're doing continue to follow their passion, they follow their love, they follow their spiritual calling to create their own community, create their own inner civilization that is full of love, harmony, higher will, and divine spirit. We are all capable of this, and some of us are doing that right now today. Paving way, trailblazing, and building healthy communities in the midst of toxic and imbalanced behavior. I thank you guys again. And as we close, just want to give you the reminder, there is still one more space open for the Costa Rica retreat next month. This is an opportunity. And if you guys also are interested in sitting with me in a private space and having a one-on-one session, whether it's Reiki, light language, oracle card reading, or just a consultation session for shadow work and reflection, or you would like some life coach guidance, you guys can always book me, and you can also discover your soul origin as well as I do Akashic Record meditations. Check out the QR code in the corner or the site in the ticker or the description below, and you'll also be able to access all of my available retreat registration forms, as well as my organic reishi and anything about the Sacred Kingdom page, where you can explore various holistic shamanic practitioners, as well as artists, musicians, and organic home product makers all around the world. If you guys have anything to final comments to put in the comments, feel free to put your final comments about the episode before we hop off. And I want to thank you guys again for being a part of this magical space as we came into this deeper relationship with the aspect of our universal self known as Morya of the first ray. For the raw material law of one with Sandy Marshall. And then you'll see me tomorrow rising at 10 a.m. Eastern as we travel into the second ray Chohan. And that will be of the yellow ray. Tune in this season.
5 days in Jocko Beach, cacao ceremonies, sunset sailing, and finding your inner light. This May, Sacred Light is calling you to Costa Rica for the most transformative spring retreat of your life. Picture yourself waking up at Jocko Bay Towers, steps from pristine beaches. For 5 magical days, May 16th through 20th, you'll journey through legendary waterfalls, connect with sloths and monkeys at Manuel Antonio National Park, and experience the wonder of bioluminescence under starlit skies. Led by quantum shaman Marcus ChristoLight, Dr. Rhonda Clark, and sound healing master Sadanam Singh, you'll dive deep into sacred cacao ceremonies, beach yoga at sunrise, and healing sound baths that awaken your soul. Every vegan meal is crafted with love. Every excursion designed to reconnect you with nature's magic. All of this paradise awaits for just $1,111 solo, or $1,777 for 2 souls ready to transform together. Spaces are limited and filling fast. Register now through the link below, grab your passport, and step into the light. Paradise is calling your name this spring.